My dad was arrested at 6 a.m. and by dinner, his boss was living in our house, using dad's coffee mug and calling me kiddo. When I found the voice recording that could prove dad's innocence, he tried everything to break me, but I turned his own weapons against him in ways he never saw coming. My dad used to leave post-it notes in my lunchbox saying, "Roar means I love you" in dinosaur. Even at 14, I kept every single one in a shoebox under my bed. So when the FBI dragged him out of our house at 6 a.m. in Spider-Man pajamas, while mom collapsed screaming on our front lawn, I knew something was wrong. The way they wouldn't let him hug me goodbye. The way they ignored him saying he was innocent. Within 48 hours, Richard showed up at our door. Mom's boss from the accounting firm where dad had worked for 15 years. He had grocery bags in his arms and this practiced look of concern on his face. "Marina, you can't go through this alone," he said, already stepping inside like he belonged there. Mom was too broken to argue when he announced he'd be staying in our guest room. He'd already brought 3 suitcases, like he'd been planning this. That first night, Richard sat in dad's chair at dinner. He used dad's coffee mug. Richard even tried to cut my meat for me like I was 5. "We're going to get through this together, kiddo," he said. I wanted to throw up. The way he said kiddo made my skin crawl. Dad never called me that, but for months, I played along. I helped Richard box up dad's things because mom said we needed to be grateful. I served him dinner and pretended to appreciate when he came to my soccer games, standing where dad used to stand but checking his phone the whole time. He threw money at everything but couldn't remember if I played offense or defense. When I got my period and needed mom, she was at another lawyer meeting with Richard. When I had nightmares about dad being hurt in prison, Richard's solution was to buy me a new laptop. I wrote dad letters in secret, hiding them between my textbooks. At night, I still set his place at the dinner table when Richard worked late. I wore dad's old college hoodie to bed even though it was huge on me and mom said it was morbid. Sometimes I could still smell his cologne on it. The breaking point came when dad's birthday rolled around, his first in prison. I'd saved my allowance for 3 months for bus fare and even filled out all the visitation forms myself. When I asked mom, Richard answered instead, "That weekend won't work. I have the Henderson client dinner and I need my family there. It's important for my promotion." Mom backed him up immediately. "Richard's right, honey. That promotion means college tuition. Your father would understand." When I said dad was innocent, Richard lost it. Innocent men don't have offshore accounts in the Caymans. Stop living in fantasy land. Mom took my bus money that night, said it was for my own good. I heard her crying later, but she still didn't give it back. So I tried to hitchhike. I made it 50 miles before state police picked me up at 2 a.m. at a gas station. Richard convinced mom I needed therapy for my delusions about dad's innocence. He put tracking apps on my phone and monitored all my communications. 3 weeks later, everything changed. Richard came home completely wasted from some office party. I found him in dad's study, holding dad's watch and rambling. "Your father, always so damn righteous, wearing his wire to the office like some kind of hero. I had to rip it off him myself that night." He passed out in dad's chair. I stood there confused. What wire? Dad wasn't wearing any wire when they arrested him, and his watch had been missing from the evidence list. Mom was calling from upstairs, asking if Richard was okay. After she went back to bed, I searched everywhere for that watch, until I remembered Richard's car. My hands shook as I took his keys and snuck to the garage. In his glove compartment, wrapped in a plastic bag, was dad's smartwatch, the one I helped him set up last Christmas. It still had 2% battery. I opened the voice memo app. The last recording was from the night before dad's arrest. His voice filled the car. "Richard just left my office. He's threatened to plant evidence if I don't destroy the audit report. I'm recording everything now." Then Richard's voice clear as day. "By morning, you'll be in handcuffs. I've already moved the money to your accounts. Marina doesn't have to know what you did. I'll take good care of her." There were sounds of a struggle. Dad yelling, "Get off me!" Richard snarling, "Give me that watch!" Then nothing. Just static. Then the recording ended. Suddenly, I heard the garage door creak open behind me. Richard stood there, car keys in hand, stone cold sober. "Looking for something, kiddo?" My heart hammered against my ribs as I clutched dad's watch tighter. Richard blocked the garage entrance completely, his shadow stretching across the concrete floor. The motion sensor light clicked on behind him, throwing harsh shadows across his face. I scrambled backward, bumping into the car door. My thumb found the emergency call button on my phone, hovering over it while my other hand gripped the watch like a lifeline. Richard stepped forward, closing the door behind him with deliberate calm. The soft click echoed in the suddenly too quiet space. He moved toward dad's old toolbox on the workbench, his movements unhurried. I pressed myself against mom's Honda, watching his hand drift over the tools. His fingers paused on the hammer handle. My mouth opened before I could stop myself. The words tumbled out in a rush, high and scared. I told him mom would hear everything on the recording, but my voice cracked halfway through, making me sound exactly like what I was, a terrified kid, not some confident accuser who had him cornered. The neighbor's motion light suddenly blazed through the garage window. We both froze. Mrs. Chen was taking out her trash, same as she did every night at 11 p.m. Through the thin garage walls, we could hear her humming that Chinese song she always hummed. She'd hear any screaming. She'd definitely hear any screaming. My eyes darted between the garage door opener on the wall and the watch in my hand. I had maybe 3 seconds to decide, protect the evidence or get out. Richard's breathing had changed, matching the panicked rhythm I'd heard in dad's recording, the same desperate edge. I chose the car. My body moved before my brain caught up, yanking the door handle and diving inside. The locks clicked down just as Richard's hand left the hammer. He walked calmly to the key hook by the door, like we were playing some twisted game of chess. Mom's voice drifted from the kitchen door. She was asking if everything was okay out here. Richard's response came smooth as silk. He was just helping me look for my soccer cleats. The lie rolled off his tongue so easily. I sat frozen in the car, realizing I'd have to lie too now, to protect her, to buy time. But that made me complicit in his deception, didn't it? Richard approached the car window. His hand trembled as he reached for the door handle. Actually trembled. Under all that control, he was terrified too. My phone buzzed. Jake was texting about tomorrow's study group, asking if I'd finished the history chapter. Normal life continuing outside this garage while I sat locked in mom's car with evidence that could destroy everything. I fumbled with dad's watch, trying to to plug it into the car charger. 1% battery now. The screen kept flickering. My fingers shook as I searched for the phone charger cable, praying the recording would transfer in time. But did I save the evidence or call 911? The watch screen went black for a second before flickering back to life. My elbow hit the horn. The sharp honk shattered the night. Within seconds, Mom appeared in the garage doorway, her bathrobe tied hastily around her waist. She looked between Richard and me, confusion clouding her face. Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and something shifted in his expression. Mom was saying something about the custody evaluation tomorrow, the forms Richard needed to sign. Without his signature, she couldn't prove we had a stable home environment for family court. My chest tightened. The familiar crushing weight started building, just like after Grandpa died 2 years ago. Mom recognized it immediately. Her face fell as she watched me struggle to breathe normally. Richard's phone screen lit up again. He typed something quickly, then held it up so I could see through the car window. A screenshot of Dad's work credit card statement. Legitimate client dinners, but the amounts. Richard could twist those numbers any way he wanted. I tried to download the recording to my phone, but the parental controls Richard had installed weeks ago blocked the file transfer. An alert would have just gone to his phone. He knew I was trying to save it. Another text from Richard appeared on my phone. A reminder that he controlled our family Spotify account, where all of Dad's carefully curated playlists lived. Years of music memories. The account would be deleted in 24 hours unless the payment was updated. The next morning came too fast. I hadn't slept. My hands shook as I reached for Mom's coffee mug, trying to act normal. It slipped through my fingers, shattering on the kitchen floor. Mom looked at my trembling hands, at the dark circles under my eyes. I looked exactly like what Richard wanted her to see, a strung-out kid falling apart. At school, Coach pulled me aside after practice. Richard had called about my home situation. As a mandatory reporter, Coach had to document any concerning behavior. I stood there in my muddy cleats, realizing Richard had just weaponized the entire school system against me. By lunch, the whispers had started. 3 teammates mentioned their parents didn't want them sleeping over at our house anymore. That unstable house. I took my tray outside and ate alone by the dumpsters, away from the stairs. Richard's words from breakfast echoed in my head. Something about offshore accounts. But wait, that matched Dad's legal overseas client payment account. The one Richard had helped set up years ago when the firm got that international contract. He'd been there for all the paperwork. Jake found me after school. His face was uncomfortable as he admitted his mom worked at Richard's firm. She needed a recommendation letter for his college applications. The unspoken message was clear. Don't drag his family into this. The cloud backup notification popped up on my phone that night. If I could prove Richard planted evidence, I'd also have to reveal that Dad hid a $50,000 bonus from Mom. He'd been planning to surprise her with an anniversary trip to Italy, 30 years together, but hiding money would make him look guilty of something, wouldn't it? I smiled when I found the backup had worked, just a small smile of relief. The guidance counselor saw it through the library window. She wrote something in her notebook. Later, I'd learned she'd documented it as an inappropriate emotional response to my father's imprisonment. My phone buzzed. Richard again. 2 words that made my blood run cold. He knew this would end with one of us destroyed. The question was, which one? The next week blurred together. Richard started attending my parent-teacher conferences alone. He charmed Ms. Martinez with stories about dedicating himself to step-parenting during this difficult time. She showed him my creative writing journal, where I'd written about feeling trapped. He tucked that information away for later. The polygraph results came back. Mom passed. She truly believed Richard had been helping with taxes that evening. I passed too. I knew he'd been drinking at the office. 2 truths that couldn't both exist, but they did. Someone found my old texts to Jake. Complaints about Dad being too strict about grades. Normal teenage venting, but in the custody evaluation, it became evidence of my resentment toward authority figures. The 7-year-old from next door tugged on my sleeve at the bus stop. She wanted to know why my daddy stole money. Richard had explained it all at the block party, she said, in terms simple enough for a 2nd grader to understand and repeat. Late one night, I remembered the old nanny cam account from when I was little. The cloud storage still auto-saved. Scrolling back through months of footage, I found it. Richard in our living room, a month before Dad's arrest, practicing his concerned face in the mirror, rehearsing the words he'd say about Dad's suspicious behavior. I tried to submit the recording to family court. The judge's clerk sent it back. Any recording submitted by a minor in a custody proceeding would be seen as an attempt to manipulate the proceedings. Dad's Amazon password still worked. His order history showed 2 identical watches ordered as gifts. One delivered to him, one scheduled for delivery to Richard's office. Never arrived. The order was canceled the day before Dad's arrest. Richard's LinkedIn timeline didn't add up. He claimed to be at a conference during arrest week, but the hotel receipt photos he'd posted showed different dates if you zoomed in close enough. Dr. Patel, the therapist Richard had chosen for me, took notes during our sessions. She had to report my concerning fixation on my stepfather figure to the court. It was her legal obligation, she explained, looking genuinely sorry. I tried recording Richard at dinner, but he caught the reflection of my phone screen in the microwave door. He didn't say anything, just smiled and asked if I was still trying. That word, kiddo, dripping with false concern. Mom's doctor appointment ran over. I could either accept a ride from Richard or miss the custody hearing. I sat in his car, watching him adjust Dad's watch on his wrist, the engraved one from when I was born. Mom had said Richard should have something to remember him by. Richard made an offer as we drove. I could keep one recording of Dad's voice if I stopped all this nonsense. Just one. My choice, which one? His generosity, he called it. I refused. The court mediator wrote that down too. Noted that I preferred conflict over preserving my father's memory, that I was choosing chaos over healing. Everything was falling apart. Dad's sister called to say she was sorry, but she couldn't testify. Someone had filed an anonymous complaint with her HR department about her spreading conspiracy theories. She had kids to feed. She couldn't lose her job. The metadata on Dad's recording showed March 15th, not March 16th, but I knew why. Dad always set his devices one day ahead after Mom's cancer scare. He never wanted to miss another anniversary or appointment. Richard's lawyer was already preparing to use this quirk against us. I found Mom's journal while looking for Dad's old files. An entry from 2 months months before the arrest. She'd written about Dad's increasing paranoia about Richard, how worried she was about his mental state. Her own words would damn him now. But reading further, I understood. Dad hadn't been paranoid. He'd been documenting Richard's pattern of financial irregularities, not to build a lawsuit, but to protect the other employees at the firm, to make sure they wouldn't take the fall for Richard's crimes. Grandma arrived for a visit. She pulled me aside in the kitchen, slipping $200 into my hand. But when Mom entered the room, Grandma's expression changed. She couldn't lose her only daughter too, she whispered. She had to take Mom's side publicly. I created a fake Instagram account and reached out to Richard's ex-girlfriend. Started with comments about her travel photos, built up to casual conversation, mining for information without seeming desperate. At the pharmacy, I accidentally ran into Richard's mother picking up his prescriptions. Small talk revealed the anxiety medication dates, how long he'd been taking them, when the doses had increased. Dad's phone was still logged into our family computer. His voice memos app had synced before the arrest. In the recently deleted folder, I found the backup. Everything was there. Everything. Ellen, Dad's former secretary, reached out through a lawyer. She had information about Richard asking her to notarize backdated documents, but she wanted immunity before talking to investigators. Her own involvement was too deep. I missed my crucial therapy session while meeting with Ellen's lawyer. Dr. Patel had to mark me as non-compliant. The custody recommendation was immediately downgraded. My college savings account emptied fast. The lawyer quit after Richard threatened her firm's biggest client. Something about pulling their entire portfolio if she continued representing me. At Dad's favorite diner, I confronted Richard's assistant. The elderly waitress who'd served us for years had heart palpitations watching us argue. An ambulance came. Richard used that too. Said I was traumatizing innocent people with my delusions. School suspended me for emotional outbursts affecting the learning environment. The homeschool tutor they assigned? Richard's neighbor. He'd recommended her personally. Richard claimed my room needed mold inspection. I moved to the basement couch while he installed what he called air quality monitors. The little red lights blinked all night, recording everything. Mom found me crying in the laundry room. She begged me to let Dad face his consequences in peace. I was killing her with this stress, she said. Her hands shook as she folded Richard's shirts. My investigation into the firm's books triggered an audit of Jake's mom's department. Jake texted me a photo of his mother crying at their kitchen table. Because of me, he wrote, his parents were considering divorce over the financial stress from audit fees and legal bills. I kept going anyway, even knowing Jake might lose his home, even knowing his family was falling apart. The truth mattered more than friendships now. During a mandatory counseling session, the school counselor asked me directly, what if Dad really did take the money? The question hung in the air. I couldn't immediately answer. Doubt crept in for the first time. I admitted to Mom that I'd considered recording Richard without consent, showed her my moral struggle, how I decided against it in the end. She looked at me with something like pity. The watch recording revealed something else. Dad knew I was being bullied at school, but he'd been too focused on gathering evidence against Richard to help me. His voice on the recording said he should have seen the signs, should have been there. Richard's lawyer filed an emergency motion. Due to my deteriorating mental state, the hearing needed to be advanced. My lawyer was conveniently in Bermuda, unreachable. Looking at Richard during the hearing, I saw something unexpected. He genuinely wanted to be the father figure he thought I deserved. All those years of watching Dad work late, missing my games, missing dinner. Richard had seen an opening to be better. His rage came from Dad rejecting his mentorship, from Dad threatening the image Richard had built of himself as the family's savior. It was never about money. It was about ego. I had to reveal Dad's investigation notes, the ones about Richard's Tinder profile, how he'd studied the wives of firm employees, how he'd researched Mom's interests, her favorite wines, her college memories, planned his approach like a marketing campaign. To match Richard's tactics, I had to become calculating too. Had to befriend his elderly mother at her assisted living facility, listen to her ramble during bingo about Richard's money troubles, how he'd borrowed from her retirement account. When I finally proved Richard had lied about something small, a detail about a client meeting, the victory felt hollow. I watched him break down at Dad's grave later that day, both of us sobbing over the same headstone, both of us lost. Richard's counterclaim gained traction. I was a danger to the household, he argued. The judge seemed to agree. Everything would come down to Mom's testimony about the night of the arrest. Richard's mother texted me after the hearing. He'd destroyed her retirement savings too, but I was hurting innocent employees with my crusade. Their families needed those jobs I was putting at risk. Dad's former colleagues were divided. Half suspected Richard all along, but stayed quiet. The other half protected their jobs by supporting Richard's version of events. Nobody wanted to be the next target. The judge explained the burden of proof. Clear and convincing evidence. The recording alone wasn't enough. Could be fabricated, could be taken out of context. I needed corroboration. I called Dad's client Mr. Chen. He owed everything to Dad's investment advice over the years. He agreed to look at the books one time only, just once. He found a partial audit trail but wouldn't testify. His visa status was too precarious. The trail revealed why Dad stayed quiet. Richard knew about Mom's breakdown after her father died, had recordings of her therapy sessions when she'd confided in him as a friend. Dad kept silent to protect Mom from being declared an unfit mother. In Dad's car, the Bluetooth history showed Richard's phone had connected the night before the arrest. There was a recording of a call to Mom, Richard planning his next moves while sitting in Dad's driver's seat. The evidence existed because Dad spent his final free days installing security systems instead of being with family. He'd known what was coming, had chosen gathering evidence over spending time with us. I understood now. Dad chose justice over safety, stayed to protect Mom despite knowing the risk. He knew the cost and paid it anyway. In court, I revealed Mom's past breakdown, established Richard's pattern of control, how he gathered ammunition on everyone, how he used their vulnerabilities against them. Richard's notarized statement swore he'd never entered Dad's vehicle. The Bluetooth logs proved otherwise. Perjury in a federal document. His face crumbled as he realized it was over. I presented each piece of evidence calmly. No satisfaction as Mom realized the depth of Richard's betrayal, just exhaustion. Richard's support network visibly distanced themselves in the courtroom. The FBI reopened the case based on evidence of frame-up and coercion. Both sides prepared for a federal criminal trial that would go beyond family court. We all showed the wear. My hair had started falling out from stress. Richard's had gone gray seemingly overnight. Mom looked like she'd aged 10 years in 10 months. The truth emerged through forensic accounting. Richard's embezzlement went back a decade. Layer after layer of financial manipulation. Companies gutted, retirements stolen. Richard's secretary finally admitted she'd known. But her son had special needs, needed the insurance. She couldn't afford to have a conscience, she said, crying on the stand. The judge ordered psychiatric evaluations for everyone, including Mom, including me. We were all considered damaged now, all needing professional assessment. Digital forensics authenticated every recording despite chain of custody issues. The metadata confirmed the timeline even with Dad's quirk of setting dates ahead. Truth was truth, even when it came from broken sources. Richard's pattern went back further. His mentor had died in a car accident after discovering embezzlement 10 years ago. The accident happened the day after confronting Richard. Nobody had connected the dots until now. During his breakdown, Richard revealed his mindset. He genuinely believed he deserved the money more than his victims, deserved their families, deserved their lives. It wasn't theft to him. It was correcting cosmic unfairness. They asked me for a victim impact statement for sentencing. I requested maximum security but with mental health treatment. Richard was sick, not just evil. Dad would want him to get help, I said. Dad got released on bail pending retrial. I gained temporary guardianship through Grandma while Mom entered intensive therapy. We were a family in pieces, living apart while trying to heal. The community divided into camps. Those who'd ignored the signs, those who'd tried to help but were shut down, those who'd enabled Richard, those who'd suspected but stayed silent. Half the firm had known something was wrong. In therapy with Mom, we started rebuilding. Trust was broken, but not irreparable. She'd been a victim too. We both had. Richard had played us against each other perfectly. Restraining orders were issued. Financial restitution ordered. Dad's reputation restored. But none of it felt like victory. Just the end of one nightmare and the beginning of a long recovery. 6 months later, I spoke at a victim advocacy group about recognizing coercive control, about how predators isolate their targets, about how they make you complicit in your own manipulation. Dad was rebuilding his practice. Mom was completing therapy. Richard was serving 25 to life with psychiatric treatment. We were healing separately but intentionally. Justice wasn't revenge. It was preventing future victims, making sure other families didn't lose what we'd lost. We carried both trauma and hope as we rebuilt the lives Richard had tried to steal.